Okay, in this video, we are going to talk about colored pencil shading. We're going to work through a color spectrum blending exercise. We're going to talk about using different amounts of pressure, blending colors to make a sphere, and then we're also going to talk about blending complementary colors to make desaturated or neutral versions of our colors. First, I want to talk about the color pencils themselves. So these are Prismacolor pencils. They are the Scholar variety. So they're a step down from like the professional ones, but they are quite a step above the basic Crayola classroom ones that you will find. These have a very soft lead. They are very smooth to blend with. They layer great, but you do need to be very careful with them because they will break easily. You don't want to drop them on the floor because they can break up inside, and then it's very hard to keep a sharp point on them. And they are a little bit more pricey, so we want to be very careful with these. We always want to use a hand sharpener with these. So we are going to start with our color spectrum up here. We want to practice blending smoothly from one color to the next in the boxes here. So we're going to start with red and then move on to red, orange, orange, yellow, orange, so on and so forth, all the way through red, violet. You are not going to have a pencil that perfectly matches each color, but you can kind of pick and choose what's closest. Sometimes you'll need to fully blend a color, and sometimes you might have a pencil that's very close. So we're going to start here with the red. I'm going to go ahead and start bringing that out, but I do, as always, want to have a rough edge when I'm blending so that we have a smooth blend like this and not vertical lines going like this, butting up against each other to make stripes. We don't want to see where the red stops and the red-orange starts, so we want them to overlap really nicely. So I'll go ahead and grab my orange. I'm actually going to go ahead and put a little bit more red there because I do want to make this one just by blending. So we know that the orange is going to go right here, but we are going to blend it back, and I'm going to use those circular motions every time I'm blending pretty much any supply. It's going to help to make it a nice, even blend. Okay, that's good enough for now, but we can always go back and perfect it a little bit more later. I'll blend the orange out into the yellow orange. Okay, and then I'm going to pick my yellow. In this case, I think I want this more orangey yellow, at least to start with. And that should blend pretty nicely into my yellow green, so I'll pull it out that direction. And I do actually have a lighter green, so I know that this will work really well for my yellow green. Blending straight into green. Always using those kind of side to side, but still circular motions. We'll head into our blue green. I think I'm going to use this lighter blue to start with, and then we might blend it a little bit as we go. This one could stand to be sharpened a little bit. Okay, so we have our blue there, and then we're going to move towards blue violet. And then I am going to pick my violet or purple. So I have violet, and I also have a purple. They do look very different, so I'm going to pick the right thing for the job, which in this case would be the violet. Overlap that. That is a pretty hard edge I have right there, so I am going to need to blend that out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and grab this blue. That'll help to blend it a little bit better. Okay, got our violet. And then we're going to go all the way into our red violet. So in that case, I'm going to jump back to the red, and I'm going to blend right here. And I'm jumping back and forth anytime that I need to. This might be a good use for the purple. There we go. That's getting me a little bit further in the right direction. Okay, so this is not bad to start with, but we can make it even better. I see some areas where the green is going really far, and this could certainly be more of a yellow green right here. I'll bring the yellow over a little bit further. That blue green could be a little bit better than what I did, so I'm just going to overlap it a little bit more, just about like that. Okay, this is pretty good, but we have something called a colorless blender. So I did buy these separate from the classroom pack that we use. It looks like this. It is basically wood grain color. There's no actual color to the pencil. And if you look closely here, there's no color there either. So it is actually colorless. It does have a little bit color left on it from the last time it was used. So we'll just kind of sharpen that off. You can kind of scribble in the margins to get that out there too. So this is what it's supposed to look like. And we can take that and with circular motions as always, go over what we did and really smooth out any texture, any blending errors we have. As we are working our way across here, once we get into these lighter colors, we are going to be very careful that we haven't picked up too much pigment on our blender from back here in the darker areas. So you can always scribble that off. You can sharpen it if you need to, just be careful. And then we will work our way all the way across, just applying pressure in those circular strokes as we go. And then we have a pretty good color spectrum. You could spend a lot of time perfecting this, but you really don't need to, just for our exercise here. But I do want you to see how much of a difference the colorless blender makes, and then just practice those transitions, blending, so you can't see where one color stops and the next one starts. The next step we're going to do here is actually pretty easy. This is going to be just a little practice with changing the pressure that we use when we're using the colored pencils. So you can pick any color you want here. I'll just pick this bluish color. We just want to see the difference where we color lightly versus adding a medium amount of pressure and then using a much harder amount of pressure. You can see if you press harder with these Prismacolors, they do give you a really nice, smooth area of color. And if you were using the blender, it would also smooth it out even more. So there's the difference there. And this is what's going to help us on the next section. So we're going to move right on down here. So light pressure, medium pressure, hard pressure is going to help us when we are blending our colors to create a little bit of a value spectrum here. So we'll start with the lightest value up here and then the darkest around the edges. So what I like to do, picking whatever color you want, maybe I'll use red for this, and I'll go ahead and sharpen it just a little bit. What I'm going to go ahead and do is just start with my lightest areas. I know I kind of don't want anything up here, so I'm going to be really careful. And then I like to always use these circular motions anytime that I'm shading. And so we're going to start off real rough, but that is okay. And what we're going to do is layer and layer and layer to get these darker values out here. That way we're not accidentally using too much pressure and pushing it too far at once. If you're using a lot of pressure, you're going to basically like burnish your paper, which is going to make it really, really smooth and not really accept any more pigment from the colored pencils. So you definitely don't want to go in too hard immediately. So we can push these edges to the darkest values. And we're going to make sure that those dark values are kind of in a crescent shape. So they should come up the edges, and they should be a bit bigger towards the bottom here because the light is reflecting off this part of our sphere. So again, I like to use those circular motions because that helps to blend out my edges from one value to the next. And I'm just going to blend it all the way up. Again, you can do this with any color that you want. I recommend not using yellow for this just because it already is so light and it's harder to get these darker values with it, but it will work if you really want to challenge yourself. Okay, I feel like this is pretty close, and then I am actually going to switch right over to my colorless blender. I'm going to make sure it doesn't have any pigment on it, and then I'm going to use this to blend out my values, and it's just going to smooth things out a little bit. Again, always with the circular motions. That's kind of the key to getting these smoother transitions. And I'm also using less pressure as I go up here. And it's going to end up something like this. All right, that's good. I could probably go and make the edges even darker if I layer one more time. But like I said, the more layers and the harder we press, the less the paper is going to want to accept more, at least with this kind of paper. I'm going to go ahead and do the other two, but we'll fast forward through them. Lastly, we're going to do a little bit of practice with complementary colors down here. So we are going to pick the colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. So red and green, blue and orange, and yellow and violet. We're going to mix them together. When we mix these together, we're going to do the same thing that we were doing up here with this overlapping, but we are going to see them turn into kind of a brownish, grayish, neutral color in the middle. And that is one way that you can get a more desaturated color. If you're especially working with these really bright colors, we're mixing them them with brown isn't going to help to dull them or darken them enough, you can actually go ahead and add a little bit of their complement. So that's one way that you can do that. So we're going to see what happens when we mix here, and I'm going to fast forward because I think at this point you've had some pretty good explanation of how we're going to blend. So I'm going to go ahead and do these. Okay, and there you have the complementary colors. So you have red to green, blue to orange, yellow to violet, and you can see how they are kind of desaturated and more neutralized when you mix them. All right, so that is the basics of colored pencil shading. We want to be careful about pressure always, and we want to make sure that we're overlapping, layering, and using our colorless blender to help everything along. That is colored pencil shading.